Hey, welcome back, everybody. So, this is going to be the watch list for Monday, January 26th, as we begin to wrap up the first month of the new calendar year. So, we're probably going to have a decent trading day on Monday, with the caveat of does the US put 100% tariffs back on Canada for doing a trade agreement with China? So we're going to have to watch how these news feeds develop overnight into the morning hours to see if that's going to cause a bit of a problem. Last week, we saw where the administration took tariffs off of the EU because we have a supposed agreement with Greenland, Denmark, and the EU. Now that agreement is supposed to be better disclosed over the next 2 weeks. So, is there an agreement? Is there not an agreement? Do we go back to tariffs again? There's just a lot of noise between the US and all the other countries around the world, as well as some commentary around how the EU, UK, and NATO really wasn't a meaningful force in the fight in Afghanistan and Iran. So everybody's got their tit in a ringer, for a lack of a better term. So let's just kind of see what the news market sentiment comes out. Do things calm down in the overnight hours going into the pre-market? But some things that we got to be aware of on Monday, January 26th, we do have durable good orders. Not expecting that to be a huge number that's going to move the markets. Again, this is for November, so we're talking 60 days ago, right? Tuesday, consumer confidence numbers come out for January. Obviously, you can see that they are very, very strong, okay? And I don't know that that's going to change. Now, on Wednesday, we do have the FOMC interest rate decision, which is going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern. So with that, you want to note that on 27th, the day before, the market is probably going to be very, very range bound, very choppy, and premiums aren't going to move very well, okay? So this should be a day that you might say, I'll show up, but I'm not planning on taking a trade. Wednesday, we just don't trade that morning. I don't. Most of the analysts don't, because options premiums are absolutely horrific. Now, you can trade once Powell starts talking during the press conference. And then usually with that, Gus will do live FOMC trading. So feel free, and I'll jump on with him, and we'll kind of see directionally what the FOMC decides to do. I'm sure there will be a ton of questions around who's Trump next appointee is going to be, as well as the legality of the Justice Department going after Jerome Powell. So I'm sure he'll just kind of brush it all off and won't answer the questions, but it's going to be a bone of contention. Okay, then Thursday and Friday, things should get back to normal. A lot of data, again, jobless claims, trade deficit, wholesale inventories, factory orders, right? Now, these are also delayed from November in Q3, so I don't know if they're going to have that much of a weighting on the market, but what we are going to want to watch is the PPI, right? And what's the producer price index doing? Because that's a December number, and then we got the core year over year, as well as some Chicago business barometer. Again, this one's not a really big market mover, but it's going to be a lot as to what does the FOMC have to say going into Q1. Now, Jerome Powell only has, I think, 2 or 3 more meetings left, and then he's going to be stepping down. So what happens between now and then? Now, we also have a lot of earnings that are coming out this week. So, and I'm going to go through a lot of them with you. So this week's watch list is based upon a lot of the names that you're going to see here, like United Healthcare, Boeing, UPS, General Motors, Starbucks, Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, Apple, SoFi, American Express, and then some of the oil names, okay? So be aware if you're going to trade any of these names that there could be quite a bit of market volatility depending if they're announcing before the market, right? Which is good because then you could just trade the results, which is kind of nice. Or if the results are going to be after the close, trade those the next morning, okay? So whatever is announcing pre-market, that's cool. You could trade it as the bell opens because you have line of sight, but don't try to trade, for example, Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, my experiences at least, on that day. You get a lot of range-bound chop. You get very high implied volatility. premiums are expensive, and just the littlest wick up or down will put you in a winning or a losing position very, very quickly. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the charts. So we're going to start with SPY. You can kind of see on a 15-minute time frame that we are just pretty much range bound, right? It's not doing a whole lot. We're just kind of stuck between this, 687 and 691, with just the back and forth. We have a fairly balanced market here. Sellers and buyers are on top of one another, which is just why you get this up and down, right, back and forth with not a lot of momentum out of the gate. Now, we did get that, for example, right, over here on Wednesday where we got a nice push up, okay? We came down on Thursday, pushed up, and then on Friday was just kind of chopped. So we need to really get out of these ranges, in my opinion, to see things move exponentially higher or quite a bit lower. Let's take a look at technology, QQQ. This one's been a little bit broader, although again on a 15-minute time frame, very narrow moves, right? We've been getting some good opening prints, good moves up, down, nice moves up, down, moves up, okay? But then as the day starts to progress, just a consolidation. Just waiting to see, as we know all the tech earnings are coming up starting this week, right? With Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, some really big names that we're going to want to see how this comes into play. So you could also see the indecision on the wicks, right? For 15 minutes, nobody. Like there's no body within these candles. It's just all wicking. And that's just the indecisiveness to the upside and to the downside. So let's take a look at the names that are going to be announcing earnings with some price levels that you can play. The first one I'm going to start with is going to be United Healthcare. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this one. Now this one is going to be announcing before the market opens, so they might run this up before they actually announce on Monday. I do like this one. I don't think that I would be taking puts. Again, quite a bit of chop, not a lot of movement, but a good entry point would be this 353.06 to see if we push higher. If they start to run some momentum, for example, on Monday, then what I would watch for is, are they going to push this into Tuesday's earnings, right? So you might get some good follow through tomorrow for United Healthcare to get just a drawdown and then a push higher, possibly to this 366, knowing that earnings is going to be Tuesday morning. Okay, so keep that one on your radar. Let's go ahead and look at Boeing. And I know that these are pretty wide, but it's just the charts, right? We have just a lot of back and forth on some of these names with consolidation, decent drawdown, consolidation, drawdown, back to consolidation again, right? I really think Boeing has been on a tear, right? So this thing was just in the 180s not that long ago. Let's see, 180s back on November 21st, right? And now we're at 252. I mean, so talk about a move, but this thing is definitely ripping higher across the board. Do I want to short this? No, I want to see what their earnings are actually going to be. And again, they're going to announce Tuesday before the bell, but you at least have some good targets to the downside as well as to the upside if you want to trade after. Let's look at UPS. UPS actually last year was all the way down to $80, and now we're at 107. Again, good consolidation. The street is, thinking that, again, this one was overdone to the downside. But again, looking at this on a daily basis, right? For 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days, it stayed between 104 and 107. I mean, so the stock is not moving like a Tesla or an Nvidia or some of the others that have more extreme volatility. Now, if you do hold this 107, again, knowing that they're going to announce Tuesday before the market open, right? So this is another Monday trade, just like United Healthcare, right? Will they run this up into earnings? So this could be a good call trade, okay, on the open. If they push down to 105, that would obviously be a better price. I don't think they're going to push it down to 104. I mean, we're talking, right, 2% here, 3% here. There's really no reason, unless something monumental happens, that UPS is probably going to be down 3%, unless, again, tariffs on Canada send the market spiraling lower. Let's look at General Motors. General Motors has been another one that has been ripping. We do have a window here that's open on a gap on a lower time frame, okay, not on a daily. But this is another one, 79.24. GM is going to also be announcing Tuesday, okay, before the market opens. So again, you might get chop, but if you get some momentum in a very strong market on Monday, you could definitely look for some calls to the upside. Really where you want to get above to take that call entry, ideally, is probably right around this green candle here, right around 80 bucks, right? So let it get above 80 bucks. And I'll use this as a blue line to kind of show an interim where it rejected before we can actually go higher. So keep GM on your radar as well. Let's look at Starbucks, new CEO, right? This thing took off on the announcement of him, and then they disappointed on earnings, and they had issues in China. We are definitely in a sell area. Do I want to short this going into earnings? Probably not, but I think what it gives you a good opportunity to do, guys, is to chart your price levels. And if you break a level, we're probably going to this level. And if we break this level, we're probably going down to the next lower level, right? So just really thinking about where are your pivots, where are your highest levels, and your highest concentration, right? I actually like a price level right here at 89, which is on a 1 hour time frame. So if we're to look at these charts on, right, daily, 4 hour, and 1 hour, which are going to be my strongest pivots, where do they sit and where do they align? Okay. And again, I know that we get down here to the bottom of the pivot. This is going to be the strongest area to get a reaction. But if we break below it, then typically you're running to the next pivot down. Now, on a stock like this, right, I like my price levels, be a couple dollars apart. What I don't like here is, right, we have buyers and sellers on top of one another, but the buyers are very low level, 30-minute demand being formed. Now they're pushing it up, but they're also probably pushing it up on lower volume, if I had to guess. Let's take a look at what they're doing here. Yeah, I mean, steady volume, but it's nothing monumental, right? The most amount of volume was here on this candle, and then we've started to pull back just a tad. So keep an eye on Starbucks, but you know, if they disappoint, I think this thing's coming back down to the $80 mark, and we'll actually see, right? It's we got an upgrade from William Blair 2 days ago, you know, and again, I think there's going to be a lot of indecisiveness as to whether or not this thing's going to push back into the $100 range. Let's look at some of the tech stocks. Microsoft, I'm going to start there. This has been weak as software has been super weak, but Microsoft caught a really good bid this past week. I mean, it really ran pretty hard over the last couple days, especially on Friday. So you can see we're rejecting my price level 471 that was here from last week. This candle high is 471.10, so we pretty much rejected it to a T. Now, where do we want to see? Are we going to be able to hold for the continuation? I really like calls above 471, right? Your higher risk trade would be take calls here at 463. Now, ideally, let's go to a higher time frame, and let's look at a 2 hour. And then one thing you can do, right, is watch this pivot low to this pivot high to say where else might be a good bounce area, right? Because this is a little bit on the high end, but it's going to be back down here within your golden zone. So I'm going to leave that on my charts, and I'm going to watch and see how that actually behaves, right? We could get a drawdown. So if we come back below 463, I'm not going to try to most likely short it, but if you wanted to, 460, 457 would be your price target as it's kind of rolling over, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at, you know, what's happening with our ribbons, and they are rolling to the downside, at least on a lower time frame. But on the higher time frames, we're pretty positive, right? My 9 is above my 21. I'd like to see it pull back to my 9. It's on a 2 hour chart. Let's look at a 4 hour chart. 4 hour, right? 9 is still lower, okay? But this big candle here on the short-term duration really got some traction. So keep an eye on this fib. This is going to be your best setup, in my opinion, if you want to trade Microsoft. Let's look at Tesla. We did take a trade on a fib pullback on Tesla on Friday. That was a good winner. Again, we're in a pretty narrow, tight range now. We did get a really good bounce down here at 417, which was actually a prior pivot low. Okay, so we did come down here. We got a good bounce, moving higher, some consolidation. I would look to see if this is going to go higher. Now, why am I not thinking lower? Well, if you just did a fib from this pivot here to the low, look at what it did. It blew through the 50, it blew through the 618, and what is it using as support? The 786, right? It's using this. So now if we're going to use this as a support area, right, blow through, we had a lot of wicking here, but now this candle close on a 4-hour was really strong. I want to get above this 4-hour candle to go back up to the candle 4-hour behind it, all the way up to the pivot high where my fib started. So really right now, I like calls, and that's how I would be watching and playing Tesla. So keep an eye on this one. Now, also ideally, what you could do is if we did get weakness, where would you say that I want to get a bounce on this thing? Well, again, just do the reverse. Do the fib. Now, mind you, look at exactly where the price level is, okay, on the way up. The price level on the 4-hour is in the golden zone, right? So if you start to come below this 4-hour candle right here, this is going to be my target. So I'm going to also leave this fib, and I'm going to watch how that behaves as this week starts to play out, okay? Let's look at Apple. Apple has had relative weakness, a lot of chop in this name. I really don't like it. You can see that, my price levels are pretty wide, 244 to 250. I mean, that's just huge. You did have a falling window here that recovered, that moved back to the upside. Taking a look at where we're at, right, from a pivot high to a pivot low, you can see exactly what they're doing is they're just kind of consolidating here right in the golden zone, okay? So we got to push higher, and then we never got a flush. You got some consolidation. They tried to push it lower, but now they're back here to consolidating again. This is typically bullish momentum, okay? When they are not able to continue the drop to the downside, they recover it, get a little bit of a pullback, but then consolidate. Typically, they will move higher. So if I was going to watch this one, right, again, you can use these fib levels, 247, 248, 249. I'm going to not use them because I just don't like all the consolidation back and forth. I'm going to look at this on a 15-minute time frame and say, well, where would I really want to break out from? Well, I want to get below this candle wick low for puts and then look left, right? That's also pretty much this candle wick. And then if I'm going to go in calls, I pretty much want to get above this candle wick high. Okay, so 246, 249 are going to be some interim levels. You could even get a little bit more granular if you want. And then let's just look at the supply and demand and just see what it's telling us. Yeah, I mean, you can see it, right? I mean, you can see. Well, we need to get below this. This is where all the buyers are sitting. In order to go down here, we kind of need to get above this short-term zone. It's only 45 minutes, so it's not very strong. Okay, so if we can push above that, I'd want to see us break this pivot to go all the way up to the next one. So let's leave these price levels. You can see how it works. If you're not using the supply and demand indicator, I think you're personally just doing yourself an injustice, but I'm going to leave it at that, right? It's not for everybody, but it's super helpful to watch me chart and then turn it on, and it's pretty much in alignment where the institutional price levels are. Okay. Let's look at SoFi, super wide here, $25 all the way up to 26. This one, again, not a huge fan as to how it's acting or behaving. It's kind of in a downtrend. So if I look at this on a 4-hour time frame, right, what is it doing? The 9 is below the 21. We're just kind of chopping lower. They keep trying to hold this zone. It's a little messy. The banks have been strong. The regional banks have come out well with earnings, but we got a high, a low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Now, we did make a higher high here, okay? So we have to be careful. Could this be the reversal back to the upside? So what I'm going to want to watch for this one, you can do the same thing, right? Just figure out where your liquidity was, pivot high, pivot low, and look at exactly where they're bouncing. Now the market closed, right? And I kind of said we were in a pattern. High, low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. We now have a higher high, right? This high is higher than this pivot. Okay, so that's when things changed. So now I would be watching potentially for a bounce to get above this 26.39, right, to move back up to my next pivot, 26.77. And then do we move up from there? Let's take a look, just supply and demand. What is the market telling us? Yeah, we're spot on, right? So again, we can leave this fib on here and see how that plays out. American Express is another one that's announcing earnings later in the week. So SoFi and American Express are Friday. Apple is on Thursday. And again, you guys can see the chart. And then Meta, Tesla, Microsoft are on Wednesday. But let's go ahead and look at American Express. We have an open window above. We had this longer term trend line. And let me show it to you on a 4-hour time frame where I got this from. I mean, it started all the way back here, right, in August of last year. And then we're holding trend, holding trend. We broke trend. Now they've recaptured the trend. Okay, so right now the market's going to open at 361.78, which is going to be right here. They got back above into the trend, right? They were only able to break it on 2 candles, essentially. They broke it on one, right? Came back down to where they tested it, even though this candle closed back within the zone. They tried to pull it down here, grab liquidity, and they pushed it right back up, okay? We do have an open window above, so I would keep an eye on that for a potential fill. But this one, again, I'm expecting that earnings are going to be really good, especially if consumer sentiment is strong, right? And they're giving good guidance, so I would definitely like this to the upside. And then these are just a couple that I'm going to show you what to stay away from. So I'm going to look at the oil stocks, right? They have just been ripping to the upside. We are now consolidating with Chevron at $168, right? Chevron hasn't been at $168 since when? April of last year. Before that, it was September of 23. And before that, let's be fair and come in here, and it was 22, right? But oil stocks are usually really good or really bad. And now we just seem to have a lot of consolidation. So when something is rotating out of tech or out of financials and into oil as a safe haven, right, I would probably just stay away from these. This is a good example. And not that you can't make money, but your bid ask is going to be wide. And then just look at all of this chop. And you don't have a ton of volume, which is what creates some of the nuances of getting an order filled at a decent price. Okay, and then the other one I want to show you is going to be, let me save this, is going to be ExxonMobil. And it's the exact same thing, new all-time highs, right? Let's go ahead and turn off the ribbon so I get a little bit of a clearer view. But this one is kind of the exact same thing. Let's look at it on a 1-hour time frame. I mean, just straight up, right? So if you're in the oil stocks at the right time, that's great when you get the sector rotation. But I would not be trying to catch these things where they're at right now. It's kind of like gold and silver, right? Because when they roll over pretty darn hard to the downside. So let's look at this. We probably have very low levels of overall demand, if I had to guess, just because we don't have a lot of historical data. 45 minutes, here, pretty good, right? A 4-hour, we do have a 4-hour. We have a little small gap here, so you can watch this if you want, right? Little rising window, as Alberto would say, USC Iceman, but running into some resistance up here, right? We have 135 and change. How would I play this? Well, what you can do if you want, if the market is weak and oil is weak, play for puts to come back through here and fill this gap, and then look that you might get a bounce, again, somewhere within the range of, well, where is your actual demand sitting, right? And I really like the 4-hour, base of the 4-hour versus the 45-minute. So 133 and then 131. And then if we lose that, right, we can pull a little bit lower down here into the 130s. So other than that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you. Again, always be aware of the news events. Monday should be pretty good trading. Tuesday is going to be questionable. It's the day before FOMC. Wednesday is just a no trade day for me and the team. We will probably do an educational webinar in the Discord, so do keep an eye on that. And then we will trade during Power Hour with Gus. So if there's anything I can do, just feel free to reach out, and hopefully you found this super beneficial and informational as to how we're going to trade the markets. So with that, everybody, have a great week, and before you know it, I'll see you in February. Take care. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, make sure you sign up for the free weekly Watchlist emails to get early access before the video drops here on YouTube. See you next time.